Welcome again. Warm welcome again to the Pontifical Academies headquarters. I do a brief introduction to the conference, followed by another brief introduction by Sister Helen Alford. So the two presidents tell you a bit about the objectives of this conference, followed by an introduction by our Chancellor, Cardinal Turkson, who will talk and brief you a bit about the Academies of Science and Social Science and his perspectives. I welcome the representatives of Indigenous Peoples Knowledge communities and the scientists from around the world. I appreciate that you accepted our invitations to join us and to share your knowledge, science, wisdom, concerns, and action proposals. I welcome especially Your Excellency Sonia Guajajara, Minister of Indigenous People, Brazil, the world's first Minister of Indigenous People. A warm welcome to you. I would like to recognize a few colleagues who played important roles briefing us, bringing us together and helping to shape the agenda. I want to point to Professor Mohammed Hassan, the academician of the Pontifical Academy of Science and President of the Academy of Science of Sudan, Nigel Crawhall, Chief Local Indigenous Knowledge Systems with UNESCO, Virgilio Viana, academician of the Pontifical Academy of Social Science and Director of the Foundation for Amazon Sustainability, Tania Eulalia Martinez Cruz, Universidad Intercultural Maya de Quintana Roo. I could go on, but I want to mention these colleagues because we from the Pontifical Academies of Sciences could not have done this without their and others' helps. Thank you very much. We are grateful for the financial support of the Sloan Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, who helped us with travel grants, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, our academy dates back to the early 1600s, and our Chancellor Cardinal Turkson will talk a bit about our academy in a moment. At that time, practically all knowledge was indigenous knowledge, combined with some science, mathematics. Inventions originated from experiences and ingenuity. The science pursued by our academies are aiming at finding truth. We know that is a tall and challenging agenda. The science we bring together not only covers all disciplines, but is interdisciplinary. The science in our academies is not about so-called Western civilization. We are an international institution. When Mahatma Gandhi was asked what he thought of Western civilization, he quipped, I quote, "Such a thing would be a good idea." But then he considered the West as not so enlightened and civilized. We note that there is great diversity between knowledge generated by experience gained over generations and new analytical methods in science. But the sciences, too, stand on the experiences of millennia of work of inquisitive thinkers. And errors are part of the learning process in both the sciences and the indigenous knowledge communities. Indigenous peoples, maybe about 500 million in the world, speaking 4,000 plus languages. The science communities in the world may be about, by UNESCO figures, 10 million scientists, speaking also various languages, but essentially nowadays writing in one language. So we have a language problem, a communication problem we should be concerned about. Also, the disappearance of languages of indigenous peoples is an issue. But science and indigenous knowledge communities have woken up to the opportunity of working together. If you check with a simple Google test how many publications in the 1990s per annum, about 7,000. A decade ago, about 70,000 per annum. Nowadays, about 150,000 publications, references per annum. But writing is one thing and dialogue is a different thing. We have to consider getting into dialogue among each other. Let me make a few personal remarks. My own research relates to agriculture and food systems. I work, for example, in the highlands of Guatemala, the Western Highlands, where the milpa maize fields has sacred meaning and survival functions. I worked in West Africa in an area where people of Wolof, Mandinka, Fulani ancestry live in neighboring villages, practicing very diverse farming methods. In many of these locations, violence, conflict, and marginalization has occurred and continues to impact. In other locations, not only the traces of colonialism, past and neo, are still having a big impact. We could mention, I'm sure you around the room could mention lots of examples from Asia, North America, and Australia, where nation building and political orders were based upon violent processes, marginalizing indigenous peoples. But the claim for sovereignty of indigenous nations is increasingly accepted in the United Nations and worldwide. So we recognize this background. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations play an important and growing role in supporting the rights and voices of indigenous peoples. It was truly inspiring for me to work with indigenous peoples communities in the context of the UN Secretary General's Food Systems Summit in 2021 and thereafter. So I'm pleased to sit next to you, Jon. You played an important role in that context, and you, Maximo, in that context. It taught me a lot of lessons, and I think we all learned together. This conference aims to build bridges between the views and knowledge systems of diverse indigenous peoples and diverse science communities, to explore new opportunities for solutions on climate change, biodiversity loss, food and water systems, health problems. I hope we can find common ground by not idealizing neither the sciences nor the indigenous knowledge. This conference will be a success when we talk with each other and listen to each other, as Pope Francis urged us this morning. And it will be a failure when we use it or try to use it to give advocacy speeches. We will have to report about our conference outcomes and deliberations back to Pope Francis and the general public, which I hope will include also indigenous peoples communities. So at the end of this conference, we will discuss some sort of a statement. It will not be a negotiated intergovernmental statement. That's not our way of doing things. It will be a typical statement of an Academy of Science. Nobody will be forced to co-sign, but we try to bring maybe also controversial statements together in one document. And it does not need to be a consensus statement. So let's keep the debate open in this conference and in the follow-up. I very much hope that this will be a beginning of a process in our academy. To my knowledge, Mohammed, you know the international academy scene very well. I'm not aware of any other Academy of Sciences or Social Sciences which have kicked off a gathering like this, looking together for truth and the way forward. So my greatest hope actually is that other academies of sciences, there are more than 140 around the world, copy us. And we cannot do this alone. We are not speaking for the world of science. And you, forgive me, from the Indigenous Peoples communities delegates, are also only a small subset of the rich diversity that is out there. So let's think about multiplier effects and how we can move forward. We need to note the opportunity and needs to strengthen rights and voice of Indigenous peoples communities. There may be multiple and diverse perspectives on life, spirituality in Indigenous peoples and science-driven communities. The Pontifical Academies do see complementarities and synergies between faith and science. Diverse systems of knowledge, ways of knowing, and caring for the planet are relevant to our collective future. So, welcome again. Thank you for being here and giving it your best to make this 2 days a productive and successful meeting. And with this, I would like to hand over to you, Sister Helen. Thank you very much.